They said, we're only using drones, and so no American lives are at risk, so this is not a war, so we don't have to even go to Congress to discuss this.
For you, continuous, year-round, uninterrupted flow. For them, rationing, restrictions, cutoffs in dry months.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to The Struggle. The Struggle is shown on 22 cable stations from Vermont to New York City, on the internet at thestruggle.org. Our YouTube channel, Struggle Video Media. A big activist event in April in Connecticut is the presentation of the Gandhi Peace Award. It's been given out by Promoting Enduring Peace since 1952. I'll be speaking with James Van Pelt of PEP. We'll talk about the organization, the Gandhi Peace Award, and this year's winner, Medea Benjamin. We'll show video of Benjamin last year in New Haven. At the end of the show, we get into International Water Day, which was March 22nd. We'll have a satirical video about the Israeli water company, Me'erekot, courtesy of the YouTube channel Apartheid Adventures. We'll close with a bitter comment about the hideous death sentences in Egypt of 529 people. Medea Benjamin is coming to New Haven to get the Gandhi Peace Award, and we're going to talk about the organization that gives it out, Promoting Enduring Peace, and the award. And I'll be speaking to James Van Pelt, who's a board member of Promoting Enduring Peace, as am I. Good afternoon, James.
Hey, Stan.
So tell us about Promoting Enduring Peace. When did it start out?
It was founded in 1952 by a Yale professor named Jerome Davis, who was also a labor activist. And he foresaw the coming of the Cold War and wanted to do what he could to make it less and less possible. And so over the years, the organization's three main activities have been the presentation of the Gandhi Peace Award to people we call peace heroes. Secondly, citizen diplomacy delegations to countries that are supposedly our enemies to build the person-to-person connection, and providing peace education materials to people all over the world. Most of the time that's been done through postal mail, and now it's done through our free news service, which is called peacenews.org.
Just briefly, tell us about the delegations that would go to various countries. Soviet Union was one of them.
Soviet Union, more recently Iran, Pakistan, Korea, Communist China, and so on, People's Republic of China. And again, the idea was that part of war making is to make those people, demonize them. And so the more you can create person-to-person connections, the less possible it is to pull that off. The biggest excursions that they had involved bringing large numbers of people from the Soviet Union at the height of the Cold War to the Mississippi River for paddle boat trips. And likewise, mass amounts of Americans to the Volga River for river trips with the Soviets. And, that made big news and was very helpful in changing the tenor of the relationship.
Let's talk about the Gandhi Peace Award. Who got the first one?
The very first one went to Eleanor Roosevelt. It's always accepted in person. So it was, an amazing thing to have her come and accept the award.
Of course, we're talking about the wife of the late president, Franklin Roosevelt, for the young people who may not know her.
That's right. And she, if you look up her biography on Wikipedia, she did an amazing number of things. And in our research, we uncovered some things that she did that no one had ever reported, such as she took a trip in a car that she got herself as First Lady through the South by herself to see the conditions that the black people were facing.
Who are some of the others who got it in the 50s and 60s, the Gandhi Award?
Well, in the 60s, there was, of course, Cesar Chavez actually was in '89, and the fellow who did the Pentagon Papers, Daniel Ellsberg, and prior to that, Daniel Berrigan was chosen for it, although he never actually accepted it. And so
I understand Martin Luther King also received it, but what happened there?
In his case, just before he was due to come and get the award, he was chosen as the Nobel Peace Prize winner, and his schedule went crazy, and we never could schedule a time when he could make it. And of course, then he was killed.
Around what year did you get involved?
1990. I was the personal assistant to Howard Fraser, who was the long-term executive director. And prior to that, he had been the first president of the Consumer Federation of America. So he was quite a guy with amazing connections and did just a fantastic job for promoting enduring peace.
So now going into the 80s, the one name that really sticks out is Dr. Helen Caldicott. Who is she?
She was a tireless crusader to make people aware of the dangers of nuclear weapons. And she helped found or co-founded the Physicians for Social Responsibility, the Women's Disarmament Coalition, and still is informing people 30 years later about the dangers that we still face from maintaining stocks of nuclear weapons on a hair trigger.
And then Cesar Chavez.
Yes, he was a peace hero because he showed that it was possible to make major changes, as Martin Luther King did, using the tactics of Gandhi. And there's just an amazing chain from Gandhi to people like Jerome Davis, to Martin Luther King, to Chavez, to people today using those same tactics.
And then in the more recent times, we're probably skipping lots of worthy people, but then 2 years ago, I guess, it was Amy Goodman.
That's right. She's the co-founder of Democracy Now!, which is probably the leading non-corporate owned media outlet in the country. And before that, we had the Rabbis for Human Rights, who they're literally rabbis who interpose their bodies between the Israeli army and the victims of Israeli oppression in the Palestinian areas. And then, of course, last year was our first award to an environmentalist, who was Bill McKibben. And he represented to us the dawning consciousness that peace and environment are inextricable as causes.
And now Medea Benjamin.
And Medea is fantastic because we're not giving an award to a person who's had a lifetime of achievement, but she is also very active as an old line peace agitator who takes as her job confronting the powerful with the truth and agitating other people to join her to raise consciousness of the main issues. And the main issue she's focused in on at the moment is the use of drones as a weapon of war.
So the event is what day and what time, and how much does it cost?
It's $100. No, I'm kidding. It's a free event. It's Wednesday, April 16th, United Church on the Green in New Haven at 7 o'clock. And it's always a great event. It's always 2 hours of just amazing, inspirational. And Medea has so many great stories. She was just very brutally treated by the Egyptian government, and she met that with courage and fortitude, and it's just a very inspirational event.
Medea Benjamin has decades of experience as an activist. She helped set up Global Exchange and Code Pink. She campaigned against the prison at Guantanamo. She went to Pakistan and Yemen to get first-hand evidence about the damage that our drones were causing on populations. She wrote a book about it. Now we'll have two segments of a talk she gave in New Haven in 2013.
Where have we used these drones? We've used them a lot in the invasion of Iraq, in Afghanistan, Libya. Libya, a great example of how distorted the policy is, because when the Obama administration decided to get involved in Libya, they said, we're only using drones, and so no American lives are at risk, so this is not a war, so we don't have to even go to Congress to discuss this. So Congress, which is supposed to by Constitution have the right and the obligation to be the one to declare war, is no longer even in the playing field. It's now the executive branch. Stan talked about me being in the room when President Obama gave his speech on May 23rd. And one of the things he said in that speech is that the policy of his administration has been to capture suspected terrorists instead of killing them. Well, I would like him to tell that to the family of Tariq Aziz, a 16-year-old boy who went to the capital city in Islamabad along with other drone victim family members to see what they could do to try to get some justice out of the court systems, and how could they do better documentation of the way the drones are terrorizing their communities. And so they gave Tariq Aziz a video camera and said, go home and document the drone strikes. Go home and document the drone buzzing overhead terrorizing the community. And Tariq Aziz went home to do it, and 2 days later he was killed in a drone strike. If there was any reason to think that this 16-year-old was a high-value terrorist suspect that was about to do harm to Americans, why didn't they just capture him when he was sitting in the capital in Islamabad? Why didn't they give him a chance to have a trial?
Now to an interview I did with Medea Benjamin about her life and politics. I'm speaking with Medea Benjamin, the well-known activist, and I wanted to ask a bit about her biography. When you changed your name, let's start with that.
I grew up on Long Island, New York, Jewish family, in the suburbs, not a political family at all. My name was Susan, but I was always small, so I was Little Susie. And somehow I didn't like being Little Susie. When I went off to college at 18, I started reading the Greek tragedies, and I decided I wanted to change my name, and every month I would take a different name from one of the Greek tragedies. And I really liked the name Medea. I had read two versions of that play, and one version said, you know, she killed her children. The other version said she was a strong woman with magical powers, and so they blamed that on her. And I thought, aha, I'm going to redeem this name. And I just thought it was a pretty name. And I also thought at that point that it would be good if when people turned 18, they took their own names, as part of becoming independent. And
Vietnam ended, you continue with political stuff?
I did. I went off to college, joined SDS. After 6 months in college, I thought, this doesn't make sense to pay money to sit in a classroom that's like a jail cell. I think I'll drop out and go see the world. And I did, and I traveled for about 4 years with a backpack and an extra pair of pants, and saw a lot of the world.
Yeah. And then you worked for the UN at some point?
And then I got a great education traveling around the world. By 4 years later, I spoke 5 languages. I had learned a lot of skills along the way. I ended up working for the UN in Africa, and I worked in many countries in Latin America, and spent about 10 years outside the United States, and then came back here in the early 80s.
And when does global exchange fit in?
Started Global Exchange as a way to give Americans the opportunity I had, which is to take them out of the country and let them see the U.S. through other eyes, because I thought it was so important for Americans to see other societies, other ways of doing things, and reflect on our own society. So started Global Exchange in the late 80s, and we also got involved around economic justice issues, the fair trade labeling that was starting in Europe. We brought that system to the United States, the fair trade labels that you now see on coffee and tea, chocolate, and got involved around sweatshop issues, the World Trade Organization, free trade agreements, all those economic justice issues.
Did you go out to Seattle in the late 90s?
I was sitting in our organization at Global Exchange when we were planning what to do about the World Trade Organization and said, let's shut it down. And from there was very involved in the whole plan to shut down the WTO.
And then you ran for Senate. Did you win?
I didn't win. I got about 350,000 votes, which was great. But it was also a great thing to do in California because we decided to use the campaign to build a lot of Green Party locals and also to connect a lot of the issues that were happening around the state. At that point, a lot of issues around the electricity fraud that was being committed by big companies, so environmental issues and issues around public financing of campaigns, corporate domination, the free trade agreements, and war and peace issues.
And this is the year 2000?
Yes.
And then we start getting closer to war. Let's talk about 2001. Do you recall where you were that day, September 11th?
Yeah, I was in San Francisco. I had just taken my partner to the airport, and he called from the airport and said, turn on the TV. And so many of our lives changed, and my life totally changed then because I felt compelled to stop doing the work around economic justice issues, which was very hard to do because we had so much momentum. We were making great changes that affected the lives of large numbers of workers in places like China and Vietnam, Indonesia. And yet it just seemed like I knew our government was going to take revenge that was going to lead to the death of a lot more innocent people, and ended up starting Code Pink and have been involved around the post-9/11 issues ever since.
Now, our viewers may have already forgotten the business of the codes, but when Bush was in there, they started to talk about what those codes were.
Well, that's right. It was the time when he came up with the color-coded alert system. You know, there was the yellow, which was kind of mellow, then orange, red, be very scared. And it was a way to keep people in a constant state of fear. So Code Pink was kind of a play on that color-coded alert system.
Who were, beside yourself, who were some of the people who started it?
Well, actually, it started at an environmental retreat for women. So there were all kinds of women, like the great shrimper from Texas, Diane Wilson, the wonderful pagan leader, Starhawk, Jody Evans, my partner, who stayed with me in doing this from Los Angeles. There were women that worked back in those days on building community gardens. There were just a great assortment of women. We came up with it during an afternoon break, and most people just thought it was a joke and we weren't serious about it, but a couple of us ended up going to Washington, D.C., and the first major protest was Diane Wilson and myself going to the hearing of Donald Rumsfeld when he was justifying the war in Iraq. And we didn't even know they were public hearings at the time, but we made our banners and we tucked them into our pantsuits and walked in like we were journalists and got seated right behind Donald Rumsfeld and all of these generals. And in the middle of the hearing popped up and said, we want UN inspections, not war, because, oh, I forgot to mention, one of the first things we did is we took a delegation to Iraq. And we met with the inspectors and saw them saying that there were no weapons of mass destruction. So when we did that first protest in Congress, it got worldwide attention. And then we had all kinds of people saying, I want to join Code Pink, I want to join Code Pink, and it blossomed from there.
Now, one thing, if I'm correct, that you weren't involved with was Israel for a long time. Could you talk about that?
Israel, I helped to start an organization called the Global Exchange, and there we did some work around Israel and Palestine, particularly taking groups to the West Bank. But I stayed out of it mostly because it was the one issue in my family that was very hard to approach, and I thought, there's so many other issues that I can get involved in. I'll leave that to other people. But it was really at the 2006 invasion of Lebanon that I said, I can't stay on the sidelines anymore.
And you've been to Gaza, you've been on the Freedom Flotilla, you were a big organizer in the Freedom March.
Yes, I went to Lebanon during the 2006 Israeli invasion and got very heavily involved in Middle East work in general. We started a campaign to boycott the cosmetic company Ahava that makes its products in the settlements. Involved in several of the flotillas, yes, the Gaza Freedom March, and took about 8 delegations to Gaza in which we did some wonderful projects like building playgrounds. We were accused when we got back of building playgrounds for the children of Hamas and threatened with arrest. And we made a lot of hay about that in Congress, bringing the pictures of the children swinging on the swings and say, arrest us if you must. But we have been going back to Gaza many times and to the West Bank.
Well, we could talk a lot more. This is really interesting, but I think we have to close, so I appreciate this interview.
Thank you very much, Stan.
As viewers of this program know, Benjamin was assaulted by Egyptian police when she went to Cairo on her way to the Gaza Strip. I checked with her a few days ago, and she says the State Department has not started an investigation and has not filed any complaint with the Egyptian authorities. Now to a satire on a really serious subject, water apartheid in Palestine, Israel.
Water. Everyone loves it. Everyone needs it. So come to Israel, where Mekorot, Israel's national water company, makes sure that you have all the water you want if you're of the correct ethnic religious category. And how does Mekorot guarantee that? By making sure all that water doesn't get wasted on those who are not of the correct ethnic religious category. For you, if you're of the correct ethnic religious category, 300 liters a day. For them, 70 liters a day. For you, continuous year-round uninterrupted flow. For them, rationing, restrictions, cutoffs in dry months. Your towns pay 1.8 shekels per cubic meter. Their towns pay 2.5 shekels per cubic meter. Mekorot, liquid apartheid. In Israel, if you're of the correct ethnic religious category, you have civil rights, voting rights, take their land and build a settlement rights, and best of all, water rights. For those who are not of the correct ethnic religious category, Mekorot will pump the water from under their land, dry up their springs and wells, and make them pay for the water. And if they don't cooperate, we'll destroy their pipes and cisterns. In fact, they'll be lucky to get any water at all. If we don't admit their town as a town, Mekorot won't connect them to the national water carrier system, all to guarantee your 3 showers a day and your ethnic privilege discount if you're of the correct ethnic religious category. That's why we call Mekorot apartheid in a pipe. And they're not stopping in Israel. Mekorot is making deals in Cyprus, Italy, Greece, Brazil, Argentina, Uganda, the Netherlands. Okay, they were stopped in the Netherlands and Uganda and Argentina, but with your support, Mekorot can start privatizing water everywhere and making sure that water is pure, clear, and plenty for those who can afford it. So if you support apartheid, Israeli settlements, ethnic privilege, privatization of water and natural resources, income inequality, and everything else that makes you feel special, then join Apartheid Adventures in saluting Mekorot, making sure water is a privilege and only for the privileged few.
The media is all hysterical about the Ukraine, less so about what's happening in Egypt with its thousands of dead and tens of thousands rotting in prisons. Let's change a bit. when the Egyptian government announced that in a single court case, 529 people had been sentenced to death, all for a supposed connection with the murder of a single Egyptian policeman. This is in stark contrast to the treatment of policemen convicted in the killing of 37 Egyptians by throwing tear gas into a locked police van. In that case, only one policeman was even sentenced to prison. You know that Secretary of State Kerry is hot to get all the money back to the Egyptian military that was suspended last October after months of public protest and shaming. And he was able to get Congress to restore that money, modified only in the fact that the president has to make a few meaningless pledges that Egypt is still squarely on the side of the security of the United States and Israel. And then there are the Saudis, who are given $10 billion or more to the al-Sisi regime to keep that tyranny in Egypt afloat. The Saudis, who oppose democracy everywhere and who are the spiritual and financial home of the Al-Qaeda, they never get touched, not only because they possess so much oil, but because they buy humongous amounts of American weapons. And our economy is addicted to the welfare warfare of the military-industrial complex. If you're concerned about the menace of the Saudi monarchy, contact us. We'll try to do things about it. That's our program for today. See you next week at this time. I'm Stanley Heller, and this is The Struggle.